Hello, everyone, and here is the synopsis for I believe, don't quote me on it because sometimes I can't remember anything, but the last Vialogues for the semester as we come to a conclusion of the semester. We're about 5 weeks out, so here we go. So a couple of things. You know that this is a near and dear to my heart topic. We're covering special populations, but individuals with disabilities or developmental or intellectual or physical disabilities, they're only one element or one grouping, if you will, of a special population. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind as we go through it, but I'm focusing on something that's passionate to me. So anyway, I want to kind of go through and we talk about childhood obesity. Childhood obesity does not just focus in on individuals with disabilities. It's pretty much prevalent throughout our entire society right now. And I look at it and go, the rise of child obesity presents a significant public health challenge. True? False? Yes, we know. And it's a growing concern every year. It's one of the top things in the Healthy People 2020, then the Healthy People 2030. And we know that there's issues there, but how do we address these? And individuals with disabilities really have a struggle. And we look at it from a practitioner standpoint. We look at it from a parent standpoint. How do we educate on that? So with that said, I'm going to just go through. And if you're not familiar with the Eunice Kennedy Shriver, Eunice Kennedy Shriver was an individual with disabilities, and she's from the Kennedy family, the prevalent Kennedy family, like John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, that kind of thing. And they brought about the National Institute of the Child Health and Human Development. I would encourage you to look up that website and kind of go through some of the information that's there. Not required, but I would encourage you to do this. But anyway, this paper, or this manuscript, summarizes some of the things that are previously published with regards to childhood obesity and the prevalence of obesity in children with disabilities. So with that said, obesity prevalence in children is estimated to be, have high BMIs, right? 95 percentile. That's pretty high, folks. Okay. So I want you to think about that. Obesity, let me highlight that one. Obesity prevalence in children is estimated based on the body mass in 95 percentile. Okay. This could have changed by now because this is a 2020. So I'd encourage you to kind of think about that one or look it up. Okay. So with that said, we take a look at we focus it on it from a national standpoint and from a population standpoint, at least in this case, disabilities. Okay. So one of the things that they did, which, if you're really truly interested in looking at changing obesity rates, like I know a couple of you are, the prevalence, okay, so 3 nationally represented data sources provided information for this study. And they looked at the nutrition examination survey. And if you're not familiar with that particular survey, I would encourage you to look deeper into that one because it really provides some great information. One of the things that I shouldn't say one of the things, but the categories that they looked at were mobility, vision impairments, and hearing impairments. Now, I'm going to focus in on the visual impairment. Individuals who are visually impaired tend to have higher rates of obesity, higher BMIs. Okay? That's something I'm quite passionate about. How do we get individuals who are visually impaired to actually eat better when they can't see what their food is? We often see food, we often look at food with our eyes, right? We know what it is. If it looks good, it might taste good. But, if you can't see it, then how do you know if it's good for you? Okay? Other than trying to taste it, right? So again, they looked at the categories. Limitations of mobility, too, is a problem. If a child can't exercise, you're going to have a greater, you may have a higher rate of obesity in that individual. So that's just one of the things that they looked at. Okay. So they looked at, mobility, as one of the sources, okay? I'm going to go down here, and then you can see what they looked at. Now, take a look at this particular, the mobility. All three data sources indicate that youth with mobility experience higher. I already talked about this a little bit, okay? So taking a look at this chart, okay? Children without a disability, lower. Again, with a disability, it's higher. And that's a problem. How can we level these out? Okay, and I want you to kind of think about that. How can you level it out? Okay, is there some way of, exercise? Is there different food, eating habits or whatnot? And I think that if you take a look at each subsection, I think you're going to find some good feedback with regards to that. Additionally, this particular article, what I liked about it was that it broke it down into 3 subsections, or major areas with regards to children and youth with disabilities that face challenges maintaining a healthy weight. And what I would like for you to kind of think about is each area, each subset, for example, the biological, medical, and developmental. And then you have the parent, family, and caregiver, which I'm going to dive deeper into a couple of these subsections, and the school and the community. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go up, and I'm not going to focus in on each one, but ones that I personally think are pertinent. And then I want you to kind of think about them, okay? So for example, sensory issues. Okay. And actually, I probably should focus on the medication affecting appetite too, because if somebody has an increased, appetite, they're going to want to eat different foods and that kind of thing. The food might be better for them. So kind of think about that. But the sensory issues affecting preference, texture. Okay, how many of you have texture issues? I know my husband does. He doesn't like to eat eggplant because it's mushy. So think about how texture can provide that. Now, somebody who's visually impaired rely heavily on texture, right? Because they can't see. So how would that affect what foods you eat? Okay. The other thing that, is important to note is, I'm going to go here, the lack of knowledge of caregivers. Now, I know that in this particular group, one grouping is looking at foster parents, lack of knowledge, food hoarding. Now, imagine compounding that with an individual with disabilities. Oftentimes, children who are in foster care also have a disability. So there's a correlation to that. So how do we gain information or educate individuals, such as a parent or a foster parent or adoptive parents, on individuals with disabilities and their food preferences or food choices to help them to not increase their BMIs and land in that category of obesity? So, and I thought which was interesting is overfeeding may occur because of the lack of awareness of the child's or using it as a reward. Okay. So could it potentially, could the excess of food cause food hoarding? Could it cause higher rates of obesity and or other other food issues, such as anorexia, bulimia, and so forth? Okay, that'd be kind of an interesting study, actually. But moving on. So, going to the next section. Here's one that really kind of gets me. Tailoring of services. So what can we do? What are some alternative adaptive sports? Now, you're not going to see too many adaptive sports for children. How can we provide that inclusion so that they get the exercise too? Now, the other thing that really gets me is the playground thing. I'm all about the playground thing with individual disabilities, because we don't have any accessible. We shouldn't say we don't have any. We have maybe 1 or 2 in the area. This is a big area, and we have very few accessible playgrounds in Kent County. So that's just something to think about. Is how do we provide this? And then the last one, and I'm a little excited about this area. How do we, as a community and as a school, look at that right here. Transitioning to independent living. How do we teach kids? How do we teach even the general population to grocery shop, meal plan, cook? Things should hopefully tie together soon. But this is a population which is often not exposed to these services. Okay. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and I'm going to go to gaps in the knowledge and recommendations for research. I'm going to stop right there for just, I'd like for you to kind of focus on a subsection. Think about each one, okay? And then focus just on one that might interest you. One of the things that, is interesting about this particular article was this right here. A limited number of studies are published on physical activity habits and its influence on overweight and obesity of children of intellectual and developmental disabilities. Okay. This is definitely a special population. Now, I know one group is also doing diabetes mellitus, and food insecurity. Now, think about somebody who might have a developmental or an intellectual disability and has diabetes. I'm telling you, diabetes is also considered a disability, folks. So kind of keep that in mind. But this kind of focuses on why we need to do more research. How do we get this population healthy when they're under a caregiver? But going back up here, remember, was a lack of knowledge of parents and family and caregivers. So what are we doing to educate these people or these individuals? You can't tell I'm passionate about this one, right? There's dietary research needs. I could go on forever. Pick one, okay? Research needs for obesity. Okay, I'm going to scroll down to the interventions. What? Okay, so what can we do? Now, there's I think there's 8 or 9. Oh, there's 10. I can't remember. I couldn't remember. But anyway, what are some of the things that you would do? Think about that. What are some of the things that you could add to this? Or maybe something that you just kind of gave you the red flag and said, I don't know about this, but here's what I really think stands out to me. Okay, you pick one and you think about which one really stands out to you, and let's talk about it. That pretty much closes this one out. See you in the virtual field.